Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Maitri and today I'm doing a recommendations video of 10 short books that you can finish within a day or even within 1 or 2 sittings. There are books from all kinds of genres. It's not a specific genre. So without any further ado, let's get right into the video. So my first recommendation is The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. It is a story about Natasha and Daniel, who are these two people who meet on the day when Natasha is being deported to Jamaica, which is her homeland, but she doesn't want to go there. She thinks that she belongs in New York where she lives, but for some reason she's being deported back. And just before the day she's being deported, she meets this guy named Daniel. Now Daniel is a hopeless romantic. He wants to be a poet, he's a dreamer, he wants to be a writer, and Natasha on the other hand believes that there is nothing like love, there is nothing like fate, there is nothing like destiny, and she's a very backed by science kind of person. She tries to justify everything through scientific experiences, and she talks about love like it's a chemical reaction that's happening inside our body. Now these two are such different polar opposite personalities, and they meet and they have just one day before Natasha has to go back. They end up spending the whole day together, and the book is written so beautifully because it's not just dual point of view, it is multiple point of view. So it has Natasha's point of view, it has Daniel's point of view, then it has universe's point of view, then it has the point of view of physics, of fate, destiny, and it's so good. And it also has the point of view of a security guard that they meet on the way in passing. I mean, who would think of writing a book from so many perspectives and so incredibly? I love this book, and I'm sure that you can finish this book in a day or within some hours. My next recommendation is this book called Can You Keep a Secret by Sophie Kinsella. It's a romantic comedy, and it is the first Sophie Kinsella that I ever read, and I fell in love with her. But then I read some more and I fell right out of love with her. But that's not the point. I really love this book, and most of the people seem to love this book because it's so fantastically written. So this is basically the story of Emma Corrigan, who goes on a plane and she thinks that it's about to crash. So she spills all her secret to the guy sitting next to her because she's like, I'll never see him again because we are all going to die. So what's the problem? I'll just, take it all out and tell him everything. But turns out she not only sees him again, but he's also her boss. So that is basically the premise of the whole story, and although there is not much in the plot, but the way it's written, the hilariousness of it, I don't even know if that's a word, but oh yeah, the hilarity of it, I could not help laughing out loud. I enjoyed so much, laughed my ass off, and you have to read it, and you can absolutely complete it in one day or within a few sittings. My next recommendation is one of my most favorite books, and that is Looking for Alaska by John Green. If you have been following me, you know that I love John Green. His books are the books that got me into reading, and Looking for Alaska is my second favorite book from him, the first being The Fault in Our Stars because that is just OG. So Looking for Alaska is basically the story of Miles and Alaska and their friend group. So Miles has a special talent and passion for remembering people's last words, and one of his favorite poets or writers, his last words were, I go to seek a great perhaps. Now these words stuck with him, and he wants to seek a great perhaps as well, and he knows that where he lives he cannot find it. So he goes on to this boarding school where he meets Alaska, whom he eventually falls in love with, and the story progresses from there. It's a very sad story, it's a tragic story, so you might want to go into that knowing that, because it's not just a light-hearted rom-com, it's a very deep story and it has such fabulous quotes. Alaska is one of my most favorite fictional characters of all time. I love her with all my heart, and the quotes in this books are just I love it, and you have to read it anytime you want, but it's so good, and you can absolutely finish it very soon. My next recommendation is The Authenticity Project by Claire Pooley. It is the debut work of her, and although I did not like the ending as much as I like the whole book, I will still recommend it because it's a great book, and it's basically about this group of people who come together via this diary, which is titled as The Authenticity Project. So Julian, who is an 85 or 80 something man, he writes a diary entry into this diary called as the Authenticity Project, and he writes the truth about his life. He goes on to write about how well do you know the people who live with you, how well do you know your neighbors, do you even know their names, do you know if they will be in trouble, and things like that. His main point is like how much do we pay attention to the little things that are happening around us, and he writes it all in this diary. He writes all his truth and leaves it in this cafe, which is run by this girl known as Monica. She picks it up, she writes her story, and she leaves it somewhere else, and the story progresses like that. And it is such a feel good book because so many people who have no connections, no friendship, they all come together and become a family. They go on trips together, they celebrate Christmas together, and it is from the point of view of each one of them, and it is very wholesome. It is like a book that you can read on Christmas or over a holiday or just any ordinary day because it will make you feel so good and fuzzy and warm. My next recommendation is a book I love dearly because it's a part of the series that I love with my whole heart, and that is The Lightning Thief, which is the first book in the Percy Jackson series. I love Percy Jackson. If you know me, you know my love for the series. I have read the first series and I absolutely recommend it. The reason that I am recommending the first book is because all the books are very short and you can read them all in one day. They are very fast paced, they are so funny, they are written by the point of view of a 12-year-old. I think Percy is 12 when the first book happens, but oh my god, Rick Riordan has a way with words and he knows how to write a children's book that can be enjoyed by people of all age. I love that man, and you have to read Percy Jackson. It's one of the best series in the world. My next recommendation is the book of 2021, which is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. I know I never finished that book, I DNF'd it, but it is a great book. I mean, objectively speaking, it has a lot of potential, but it is still a book that is loved by so many people. It is the comfort book of so many people, and it is this reason that I'm recommending it here, because it is not my cup of tea, but doesn't mean that you won't like it. So try it out. It is basically the story of Lena, who has to go to her sister's wedding in Spain, and she wants to take a fake boyfriend because she doesn't have a real one, and getting a real boyfriend or even a fake boyfriend is proving very difficult right now. And she wants to take a boyfriend because her ex will be there and she doesn't want to seem miserable and lonely in front of him. So here comes Aaron Blackford, and he offers to be her fake date to the wedding. They both go to Spain. They are co-workers. They are supposedly enemies. They hate each other, but and that's how the story progresses. It's an enemies to lovers, grumpy sunshine, forced proximity, everything in one. My next recommendation is a book that was one of the first books that I ever read, and I absolutely fell in love, and that is A Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks. Nicholas Sparks is one of my favorite author of all time because I love his writing. I love how poetically he writes. His romances are just chef's kiss, and I love it. And A Walk to Remember is a very short book. You can also try the Notebook if you like, but A Walk to Remember is shorter than that, and it is such a heartfelt story. It is sad, it is tragic, but it is also very happy at times. I mean, I don't know how happy it is more sad, but I loved it. I loved it so much that I made my friends read it, and they love it too. And you have to read it. It is basically the story about this girl whose name I don't remember. She is the kind of girl who doesn't date. She's very closed off, kind of. I'm sorry if I'm explaining it wrong because it has been so long. But she meets this guy named Landon. Some things happen and she says this line that you have to promise not to fall in love with me. And he says, of course I won't. And then he falls in love with her. It's so good, you have to read it. I love that book and I think I should do a reread soon. The next book is a book that I recently talked about in my last video, and that is You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogley. I already made a full review video of this book, but to brief you a little about it, it's a lovers to enemies to lovers romance. Our main characters, Nicholas and Naomi, they have been dating and they have been in so much love, but the second chapter skips to them being engaged for a year and they hate each other. And then the story progresses where they fall in love with each other all over again. But this book is so hilarious. The things they do to piss each other off, it's so much fun and you will absolutely like it, and it's so short you can finish it within a day. The next recommendation is one of my most favorite books of all time, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. My girl, my queen, I love her writing, and this book is better listened than read. So make sure that you are listening to it in the audiobook format. It is basically the story about this band, this fictional band known as the Six, and the singer whose name is Daisy Jones, and how they all meet, how they all come together to form this band, and how they rise to fame and their eventual downfall. It is not just a story about music, but it is also the story about love. There is so much romantic angst in it. It's a story about family, friends. It has topics like addiction, and the way it deals with the topic is so good. Taylor Jenkins Reid has my heart, and you know it, and you have to read this book. Not read, listen to this book. And we come to my last recommendation. I don't know if you expected this on this list and you are just waiting for it, and that is The Deal by Ellie Kennedy. It is basically the first story or the first book in the Off-Campus series, which is again a book series that I love from the bottom of my heart. The Off-Campus series is basically the story of these 4 hockey players who are all in college and they share a house. There are 4 books, and each of the 4 books is about the 4 boys each and their love stories, and it's so good. The boys are so good. They are all book boyfriend worthy and I love them, and I'm sure you'll love it too if you are into romances. And it's so addictive that you'll definitely finish it within a day or within a few hours. So those were my top 10 recommendations for all the books that I think that you can finish within a day. I will be making a part 2 when I have more recommendations for you, but feel free to drop your recommendations and your favorites and let me know if you have read any of these books. I would love to know. I'll be back with another video very soon. Until then, take care, stay safe, and lots of love.